Good Friday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock in time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Browns continue with the off-season program. Plenty of Browns to talk about a little later in the show. Lance Reisland will be along. Some film analysis of what Za'Darius Smith and Rodney McLeod will mean for this Browns defense. We begin by talking Browns, and a little bit earlier in the week we talked about Will Brinson's prediction from CBSSports.com. Predicted the Browns to go 7-10. So key to that, he had them losing 2 games to both the Bengals and the Ravens, so being swept by both of them. And again, in the AFC North, as I said, I don't see anybody winning 13 games. 12 games is going to be tough because of the strength of that division. The Bengals and the Ravens, the Browns haven't been worse than 2-2 against them since the 0-16 year. In fact, they've been 3-1 against them in 2021. They were also 3-1 against them in 2018. Browns fans are getting after Will Brinson a little bit, and Brinson is responding. So he says Browns fans playing the just don't like Deshaun whine card are acting like they haven't been consistently terrible since 1999. And you should be magically awesome in 2023. Most hilarious and obnoxious fan base of the upcoming season. With that, let's welcome in G. Bush from 92.3 The Fan, as well as the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. G. Bush, we call him passionate here in Cleveland.
Yeah.
But, again, 7-10, okay, I suppose it could happen. But if you're basing that on being swept by the Ravens and the Bengals, that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, the problem with the 7-10 thing is, and you know, sometimes, you know, I trust me, if you follow me on Twitter, you know, I've named myself, you know, the Duke of Knee Jerk, because like I'm emotional and passionate just like every other fan. So, you know, when you talk about something about with the Browns, I'm like, nah, that ain't it. Or if you catch me after a game that we got smoked, I'm going to really be in my feelings at that point in time. But I guess when you look at it, the problem with the 7-10, you know, your kind of thought process is this. It's just not the Deshaun Watson thing, because if you were just looking at the moves that they've made, you would see that they've not only bona fide and made the places on their team that were the weakness. They've made those. They've gone out and added Dalvin Tomlinson, who, if you hear people talk about what he brings to the table in terms of what his pass rushing ability, as well as his run stopping ability, you have to take a look at when you get a Za'Darius Smith and you talk about those 2 guys being starters on your team. You know, Obo is another guy that is going to play the other end. That's going to be an upgrade as far as your pass rush goes. Take a look at what they've done in terms of the draft and solidifying some of those positions. And you can't say it's just Deshaun Watson that you don't like Deshaun Watson. That's why you're putting him there. You got to look at some of the improvements and upgrades they made as far as wide receiver goes. Elijah Moore is another guy that we've seen. They needed some speed. They went and get Goodwin. So they've done some other things, not to mention still having one of the best, I would say the best running back in the league. You could say that they have one of the best or top 2 best pass rushers in the league. You could say that they arguably have a top 5 offensive line in the league when everything is moving and shaking. And not to mention bringing in a guy like Juan Thornhill, who's going to be an upgrade at your safety position. Not to mention that they've brought in Jim Schwartz and Bubba Ventura. So not only have the Browns made hay at their worst positions, they've made improvements as far as the coaching staff as well. And when you look at Deshaun Watson and you say, hey, if Deshaun Watson plays even up to the level of his worst in Houston, and his worst in Houston, you have a team that you have to at least say is a 9-8 football team, considering what they did with Jacoby Brissett. Now so that's where we're looking at. Okay, we're kind of looking at your side eye, Will, because we're like, okay, we won how many games with Jacoby Brissett and none of these other new guys? You have to at least say that the Browns are a much improved team.
And, you know, they were 7-10 last year's schedule's easier because they finished in 4th place. So it just doesn't add up. Along the lines of upgrading and improvements, Sam Monson, Brad Spielberger, who's been on our show a few times, Pro Football NFL show, talking about upgrading that defensive line and what they see.
generally, they've added a lot of talent. They've added talent at the right areas. That defensive line was a mess last season. We talked about Za'Darius Smith, Okoronkwo as well, Dalvin Tomlinson. In the draft, they hit it as well. That defensive line should be dramatically better than it was last year. And, there's not a whole lot of targeting the secondary, but you look at the secondary last year, and on paper, it should have been really good. It just wasn't, in part because the defensive line was getting gashed and they weren't able to make plays to help the secondary. So I think they're kind of banking on the idea that if all these defensive line additions, the front seven guys, work out, then the guys we have on the back end should play much better than they did a year ago.
I think it's a huge piece of it. And a very underrated small move they made was bringing in Rodney McLeod, who was with Indianapolis last year, was obviously with Philly for, 6-7 years. I think all of those with Jim Schwartz. So not only the defensive line, which is a huge, huge part of it, but I also think the talent is obvious in this back seven in the secondary, but every guy was like 25 years old or younger. And now I think you have, kind of that cagey veteran to help, a Greg Newsome, help a Denzel Ward, help a Grant Delpit. Yeah, like I said, on paper, I'm in love with this team. They just got to show up and actually do it.
And I agree with that 100%. The veterans that they brought in, the McLeods, the Tomlinsons, that should help the young core.
Oh, listen, this is why it's a very inflammatory comment by Will, because if you detach yourself from everything that's happening, detach yourself from the situation, and you just simply look at what they have on paper, look at the McLeod move, you look at what even when you rate the secondary, take a look. And just look at their grades and coverage. Look at the coverage grades in the slot from Newsome. I know he didn't have any interceptions, but he was rated one of the better slot corners in the league in terms of that. They've added more guys. I like Mitchell out of Northwestern. I love what they did and drafted him. Tyvis Powell's broken down some of the stuff on Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, and this guy can run. This guy can come up and run support. This guy is a guy that's going to be able to help you. Emerson was a rookie last year. What if he improves and getting better? And I thought he played extremely well in the secondary. So when you look at the secondary in general and the upgrades from the pass rush, not to mention Schwartz, this is a team who, on paper, is one of the most talented teams in the AFC. And that's saying a lot, given the fact that these teams in the AFC is going to be murderer's row in order to get into the playoffs because everybody is so good. And I've even asked Mary Kay Cabot on the barbershop. I had her on last week, and she says, I asked her point blank, I said, is this the best, the most talented roster that the Browns have ever had on paper since '99? And she said, yeah. And I agree with her in that retrospect. So for me, they definitely got to go out and do it. But, for as far as talent, as far as the guys on the team, on the field, on paper, the Browns are as talented as anybody in the league.
Yep, I agree with you. All right, so running back, a veteran running back could be something that Andrew Berry looks to add. Along those lines, Aaron Wilson, a NFL reporter for CBS, tells us a couple guys that have worked out. Devine Azagabo has worked out. He's played 25 games in his career starting 2019 with the Jaguars. 14 rushes, 14 receptions, also plays on special teams. Browns also worked out a running back from the University of Richmond, Aaron Dykes, per a league source. Career ranked 6th active among kick returners with over 1,800 yards. Second in school history with 4,521 all-purpose yards. And G. Bush, again, we're really nitpicking if we're talking about the 3rd or 4th running back. If they want to upgrade that, if they're looking for a guy, that could be cut down time. When everybody has to get to 53, you might find some guys that teams are trying to sneak on the practice squad that you like.
Yeah, I think, to me, I've been saying it for a while. I think this is a job for Jerome Ford. I think this is Jerome Ford's job to lose. I think we'll all back off a little bit because I don't really expect Kareem, or excuse me, not Kareem Hunt. He's still out of my system. I don't like Nick Chubb. I don't expect Nick Chubb to be getting very many carries at all. You might not even see Nick Chubb. He might get some carries in a tune-up game, but especially given the fact that the Browns are going to play in the Hall of Fame game. You're going to see a lot of Jerome Ford, and I think that's going to be time where people say, wow, this Jerome Ford kid is good. I think you're going to see the burst. I think you're going to see that he's ready to take on that mantle as a second team back. And I really liked him coming out of Cincinnati. I liked the pick last year. And I think that they've seen some development from Jerome Ford that made them move on from a guy like a Kareem Hunt. I think he's more of a long run, a home run hitter. I think he has more of an opportunity to hit that long ball in terms of making a guy miss and chunk yardage. So I think he's going to be a guy. They may bring somebody in, and I think they're doing their due diligence on, hey, let's bring a bunch of people in. Let's see if somebody wows us and then give them an opportunity to make the squad. But when I look at it, I think this is Jerome Ford's position to lose. I don't know if Kelly is still on the roster. He's been in the I guess in the Browns, practice squad and different things like the last couple of years. But I think Jerome Ford is going to be the feature back in the preseason. I think people are going to really start to see why the Browns like him as well.
Yeah, and again, limited in the preseason last year, you did see the burst, and you saw what they were thinking when they drafted him. All right, Brad Spielberger again from the PFF NFL show, talking about the Browns and how they remade their wide receiver room.
My favorite move, if we dive into that, is the trade for Elijah Moore. So for a couple of reasons. A, I think you needed more weapons besides Amari Cooper. I think Moore is such a different skill set. He is a quick separator. You're going to put him in the slot. He can win down the field. He has speed, but I think just gives you kind of a different skill set. And then, of course, Donovan Peoples-Jones will kind of be the big body, go up and get a guy on the outside. But also, in that trade, instead of just giving a pick to go get Elijah Moore, they do a pick swap, and they actually use that third-round pick on Cedric Tillman. So you added 2 wide receivers for moving down around in the draft. And I think that was just a smart way to really overhaul your receiving core. Look, it's a tough division, like I said, but this roster on paper is pretty loaded if, of course, big if, Deshaun Watson can get back to a former version that we did not see last year.
And Jewish, that his point is, I hadn't really thought of it in those terms. You went out and you got a speed guy and a twitchy guy, and you also went out and got a big guy that's a 50-50 ball contested catch guy in one move.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the room is concerned, you got everything you need. Goodwin is your straight, your guy that's going to go straight past everybody that's really extremely fast. Now, look, I get what people say. Well, he's been injured a lot. Well, look, they're not looking for those guys, him to be 1,000-yard receiver. They're looking for him to give them maybe 7 plays during the year that are explosive, right? Like you got to start looking at it like that. Tillman, they went and got Tillman. He's a big guy, bigger body, contested catch type guy. Hey, can we get 5 or 6 plays out of Tillman where he goes up in a 50-50 play on a scramble drilling and comes up with a big chunk play of 30, 40 yards? Can he do that a couple times? Is he a red zone target? That's another guy. Then you look at David Njoku. And this year, David Njoku should be looking at all of the ways that Travis Kelce wins. I want those routes. I want those same exact routes for a vertical threat or a guy like David Njoku. This is a year. I don't know what David is doing. I don't know what he's calling himself doing in the offseason. Wherever Deshaun is, you should be right next to him, hanging out. I got enough money. You got the bag. You got the check now. Wherever, hey, no disrespect, but if you're gonna be in Puerto Rico, I'm in Puerto Rico. If you're gonna be in Houston, Texas, I'm in Houston. If you're in Cleveland, I'm in Cleveland. Whatever hotel he got, you're supposed to be next door, and you're figuring out a way to get on that same page. Obviously, Amari Cooper is the route runner, polished and one of the best route runners in the game. Donovan Peoples-Jones should be highly motivated. This is the year you either make a bunch of money or you don't. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones is trying to show himself to be a number 2 receiver. He's looking at that Christian Kirk money he got a little bit ago with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So you look at whatever they give you, and then you got Elijah Moore, who, by the way, is not just a quick twitch slot guy. A guy that he can play the X receiver. He can play a lot of different places on line of scrimmage. You can put him in motion and do a lot of different things. The Cleveland Browns have every body type skill set that you want out of a receiving core. And on top of that, they're going to have a lot of competition for guys who we thought were going to do something. David Bell better be ready to go. Hey, Anthony Schwartz, hey, you better be ready to go. everybody is going to be ready to go. So I love the way that they kind of remade this room. And it's almost the same way they kind of made it out of the defensive line room. Both of those areas were weaknesses. I think they've done a tremendous job in a short period of time of remaking and re-envisioning what those position groups could be.
All right, along those lines, so Ryan Leaf, didn't work out for him as a high draft pick as a player. He is now in the media, and he has an interesting take on the Za'Darius Smith trade relative to building out this Browns roster.
The Vikings, they trade three-time Pro Bowl edge rusher Za'Darius Smith to the Browns for only 2 fifth-round draft picks. Deshaun Watson in a full season in the Kevin Stefanski offense. You add a edge rusher to go along with Myles Garrett. Cleveland could really make some waves next year. They could really be the team that showcases, hey, we're paying a guy $236 million guaranteed, and we still built a talented roster. Everybody out there said and continues to say when Lamar Jackson should get a fully guaranteed contract. Jalen Hurts should have stuck in and got a fully guaranteed contract. Their immediate response is always this: well, if you do that, you're just blowing up the team. You can't put a healthy, talented roster together when you're paying a quarterback that much money. Well, the Cleveland Browns are thoroughly trying to do that.
And again, G. Bush, it's an interesting take on what the Browns have been able to do.
Ryan Leaf, listen, I don't know you've been watching. I don't know. I know you've been watching a barbershop, but I tell you what, welcome onto the train. I'll give you, you're way bigger than I am, but I'll tell you what, that is what I've been trying to tell people forever. This whole notion about, oh, well, if you play a quarterback that much money, you can't. It's almost like the debt ceiling. Like, it's like, oh, yeah, you can't just keep kicking the can down the road, G. Bush. We're behind and I'm like, okay, well, I've just seen every single debt ceiling pass, and it doesn't matter who's in office, it just keeps passing. So we didn't go into like some sort of, I still think there's jobs out there for people. So for me, when I look at it like this, when they say you can't pay a quarterback, I just keep seeing that number get big, that $236 million. Well, now I'm seeing Jalen Hurts around the 250 range. Now I'm seeing Lamar Jackson around the 250 range. And quiet as kept, those two teams are pretty good too. And in terms of their rosters, they haven't had to have a fire sale. So with Andrew Berry, and this is going to be a very interesting season, because I think some of it is fear mongering a little bit. I think some of it is, don't step outside of the guides of the unwritten rules. And I think a lot of people were a little upset that the Browns kind of jumped the line, so to speak, when it came to certain things. Hey, you guys got to do it the company way. Hey, don't go out and give a guy who we don't think is all the way on the up and up in terms of what his stuff off the field is, and kind of raise the market and inflate it higher and quicker than we thought we should have done. So the Browns went out and did it, and Ryan Leaf is 100% correct. But they've put a very competitive team around Deshaun Watson on paper. We keep saying on paper because you don't win games in the offseason and on paper. But that's half the battle. Getting the talent in here, getting the talent to be coached by your organization is another thing, and producing is another. But when you look at it, they got 2 primetime edge rushers. They got a receiving crew. They got an offensive line, one of the best running backs, a nice secondary. Listen, I'm going to tell you what. If Deshaun Watson is anything close to where he was in Houston, the Browns are automatically in the 11-12 win range. They're automatically 11 wins if he's anywhere close to that, because they got all the other pieces. And forbidding catastrophic injuries, that's what it all comes down to.
G. Bush and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery, partners in education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with G. Bush from 92.3 The Fan, as well as the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, hi, this is Ron from Cleveland, and I just wanted to call in and talk a little bit about Albert Beer saying that Cleveland would be sorry pretty much for taking Za'Darius Smith for one of our edge rushers. You know, just because a player seems to have problems in other towns doesn't mean that they're going to have problems in Cleveland. It's just everybody seems to hate Cleveland. They were rating the pass rushers, and the Browns didn't get in the top 10. How can you even leave them out, at least in the top 10? And the same with our defensive backs. We didn't rate in the top 10. And okay, maybe that's a good thing. Everybody's counting us out. Just wait. Cleveland's coming, baby. They are coming. Love you guys. As always, Cleveland Browns. Woo!
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. G. Bush, they updated them after the Smith trade, and they had the Browns edge rushers as third. But yeah, the whole Za'Darius Smith is a bad guy thing, I've seen numerous articles where that isn't the take of the people that play with him, and those are the ones that are the most important.
Yeah, I talked to somebody, Matt Caller. He covers the Vikings, and I've had him on Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show and the Barbershop, and I really wanted to dig down and reach out and see, like, where is that coming from? Is that a thing, or and he said today, he was just like, hey, well, I can't say that I really know him because Za'Darius Smith really never talked to us. He was like, he was in the locker room maybe once or twice. We spoke to him once before the playoff game. Other than that, nothing. Like so I wouldn't say like that I know him. All I know is, his game on the field, or what his game on the field is. And I think a lot of times when we always have to give this with a grain of salt. We don't know who these guys are. Being a bad guy or a good guy is really relative. Like, I always say this, you don't really know what a person is or who they are until you eat birthday cake with them. So, like, and trust me, like, if I'm 40 years old and I eat birthday cake with somebody, that means I really know his family, because I'm going to, like, a little kid's party where we're having cake and ice cream, and I'm there with, like, nobody invites somebody to their house eating cake and ice cream if they don't really know them and really view them as a part of their lives outside of work or outside of what you do. So I don't take it into consideration that people know who these guys are. When you talk about people's teammates, here's what a good teammate is. Hey, are you available on Sunday? Or can you do what you said you can do? Are you making plays on third down? And are you just generally not punching people in the face when we're in the locker room? If I can get something from you from that, I'm ready to go. Because at the end of the day, you go your way, I go my way. It is what it is. I think production counts. In terms of what Za'Darius Smith is, all I know is he's the best pass rusher and has the best skill set of anybody, including Jadeveon Clowney, including whoever we've had opposite Emmanuel Ogbah. He is the best pass rusher besides opposite of Myles Garrett since Myles Garrett's been here, and I'll take that.
Yeah, and you know what? They're going to make each other better playing together, because each of them is probably the best the other has played with as well. Good guys make good guys better, especially on the lines. We've heard from Brad Spielberger a little bit earlier. Take a listen to this analytical view, and Brad came up with a new chart kind of as far as values for draft picks relative to trades. This is his take on what Za'Darius Smith cost the Browns in draft capital.
I like pick swaps a lot, because if you're going to move, I mean, look, 2/5 for what was like a 6th and a 7th. Yeah. Realistically, none of those picks could be anything. I think on our chart, it comes out to the Vikings gained an equivalent of like a mid-5th round pick. The bigger thing was they were not going to pay him, or they didn't want to pay him. He was clearly disgruntled, was owed about $12.5 million, I want to say, for this year, and about $20 million the year after that. Instead, he comes to Cleveland. The last year of the deal is chopped off, so he's in a contract year, and it sounds like they reworked the deal a little bit to give him more guarantees and a slightly lower base value. So, Yeah, Minnesota picks up some picks, but it's more about clearing money. They obviously go out and sign Marcus Davenport for a reason. I think it's kind of just like a win-win. Like every party in this arrangement won.
And Za'Darius Smith for a fifth-round pick sounds a lot like Amari Cooper for a fifth-round pick to me. That worked out pretty well.
Pennies on the dollar. That's why every single time that I wanna come up with a hot take against Andrew Berry, he sits back in his castle and he says, "I see you, G. Bush. I see you down there talking this stuff, but you don't even know what I got on the table. Za'Darius Smith for these fifth-round picks. Are you serious? Are you serious?" Matter of fact, and not only does he do it, he does it in a way where he gets the maximum Za'Darius Smith. He's getting peak level Za'Darius Smith because essentially he's getting him in a contract year. And we all know how players play in contract years, right? I mean, we've even seen how we saw how Jadeveon Clowney played in a contract year. Did all right for himself. But I'm going to tell you what, the fact that you get a Za'Darius Smith at that level, and now it's just not getting him. Is you got Obo who thought he was coming in to be the starter. So now you get an opportunity where you're mixing and matching and getting these guys in. Za'Darius Smith is a guy who when you line him up over guards, it's a complete mismatch. You can stand him up in a pass rush situation, and he's just so strong. Bull rush. He can be powerful transitioning in his rush. Now you get Obo on the field. You can get Myles Garrett on the field. You get Za'Darius Smith on the field. Dalvin Tomlinson can offer you something. Maybe if you find out Hill or Hurst are great pass rushers, you can put them in. Look at all of the combinations and the moves that you can do when you get these guys. So to get that type of flexibility, to be able to rotate these guys, not only did you get a Za'Darius Smith, but you've also opened up an opportunity where now you can rotate just like Jim Schwartz wants to do, just like the Philadelphia Eagles did so well in leading them to a championship or leading them to a Super Bowl appearance. Now that's where you're getting depth, and now you're getting waves of guys coming in, and that's where it's really exciting.
Yep, everybody stays a little healthier and a little fresher, little healthier long-term, little fresher in the short term. G. Bush, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, G. Bush.
All right, have a good rest of your weekend.
All right, G. Bush. Make sure you check him out. 92.3 The Fan. Saturday mornings, 8 until noon on The Barbershop. Also, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, Monday through Friday from 11 to 1. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out, other side of the break. Lance Reisland from The Plain Dealer and cleveland.com breaking down how Za'Darius Smith and Rodney McLeod might be used by Jim Schwartz. Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Time to take a look at a video breakdown of a couple of the new veterans that the Browns have signed, Za'Darius Smith, Rodney McLeod. Whenever we do film video breakdown, we welcome in Lance Reisland from The Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Lance, some veteran guys brought in that figure to make a pretty big impact. Let's start with Za'Darius Smith.
Yeah, when you watch him on film, going back to his Packer days last year with the Colts, really, really good football player. You got a guy who had, he's had 54.5 career sacks. He's a pro. So he doesn't bring really potential. He brings production, which I think the Browns really need. They need guys in that locker room. He played for Schwartz for a long time in Philadelphia. He's long. He's 6'5". He's pushing 270, 280, so he can play multiple positions. He has a plan, and that's very important. And that plan comes from being a veteran. And then finally, he plays. Everybody's talking about his pass rush, but he plays the run as well as he plays the pass. Like I said, last year he had 10 sacks just alone last year, but he also had 15 tackles for a loss. He had 37 quarterback hurries. He had 24 quarterback hits. He's 5 deflected passes. He plays inside. He plays outside. He plays linebacker. He just does a lot of things. And when you watch him on film, for me, for the first time, really an impressive guy.
Let's take a look at some of the things. So one of the things we mentioned is power to speed, and that is a key in Jim Schwartz's system.
Yeah, so you're going to see him here. He's going to come off the edge up top. So he'll play the wide 5, he'll play the wide 3, he'll play the linebackers. Here he comes off the edge. He has great extension. So very few guys can go from power to speed or speed to power because they lack one of them. So here he's going to start with the bull rush, and then he's going to get rid of those hands. He's going to deflect those hands, and he's going to finish with speed. So he does this all the time. Uses that speed. Once he gets that tackle on their heels, which he does so often, the tackle becomes a lot less strong than when they're on the balls of their feet. So he does this really, really well. Really, really, really good hands. Strong, violent hands. You'll see this all the time from him. Lots and lots of sacks, lots and lots of pressures.
The defense wants to be aggressive and kind of get upfield, and Smith fits that mold. Tell us what you see in the second clip that we're going to take a look at.
Well, here you can see, this is what I talk about his pass rush plan. So as it goes through a couple times, you're going to see him start with the 2 hands and get a little punch, and then he's going to go with a strong punch on that shoulder, and then he's going to finish with a rip. And this is just part of his pass rush plan that he has. So he does all kinds of different stuff. So instead of going with the full bull rush, he kind of it simulates the bull rush and then gets that right hand. If you watch again on the right hand on the left shoulder, he'll smack that left shoulder of the tackle, and then he's by with the rip using that speed. Again, masterful pass rush plan each and every time. And that comes with experience. And he does this all the time against really good players.
And you can see he's getting into the backfield. That's what Jim Schwartz wants these guys to do. That's why the defensive linemen really like to play for him. The other thing that you mentioned was he's flexible, can play inside and outside. Take us through what you see in this next clip.
So you're going to see him here. He's at backer here. He's on the center. So he does really good. Again, he's really good with his hands. He's really good at getting rid of those hands of the blocker. So the center's going to snap, get his hands out. He's going to take his right hand and push that left elbow down. And then he's really, really big and strong. So not only is he quick, not only can he use his hands, but he can play down in there. He can hold up against the run, being 280 with those hands. He plays with great extension in both the run and the pass. So you're going to see him here. He's lining up at the mic on 3rd down. He's going to beat the center and get a sack. And again, something he does consistently from different spots is have this pass rush plan and gets to the quarterback.
The other thing that screams is Jim Schwartz is going to find a matchup that he can exploit from game to game. And Za'Darius Smith, Myles Garrett are going to continue to exploit whatever they deem that weak matchup for the opponent is.
Yeah, you're going to see them. I think one of the things that's going to be real when you watch him on film, especially in his days in Green Bay, when they put him down at that 3 technique, and they'll often stand him up, which Schwartz will do too, especially in passing down. So you're going to have a wide 3 with Smith and a wide 5 with Myles Garrett. That creates such pressure, and then he'll walk up that Mike Backer, who's also on the Browns are guys that can run. That's going to create a matchup problem. That's going to create a one-on-one because he's really, really good, but Myles Garrett is still the focus of every offense. So Smith is going to have an opportunity to get these matchups, and he can win because where he's been the primary guy. He's been the guy that offenses have to prepare for. Now he's the second guy. Now he's the guy who can kind of benefit from playing with Myles Garrett, and I think you're going to see a huge year from him. And I think you're going to see him next to Myles, especially in passing downs.
Well, the other thing that you talked about is how good he is against the run. So here, take us through what you see in this next clip.
Well, you can see a pin and pull here by the Giants. And what I really, really like here is that no matter whether it's a receiver, whether it's a lineman, he plays with great extension. So what this extension does, it allows him to get his eyes in the backfield. So right here, he's going to set the edge. This is a great example of setting the edge, making that running back or quarterback go inside, and then he makes the play. But if he doesn't make the play, his teammates are there. So this is, again, this is a classic case of setting the edge, making sure the play goes inside. He can set the edge because he plays with great extension. He's strong enough. His hands are strong enough that he can extend not only receivers, but he can extend big tackles, tight ends. He gets them away from his body so he can see where the ball carrier's at. And again, really good against the run, as good against the run as he is against the pass.
So Smith was one of the late additions via free agency by Andrew Berry. The other one was a safety, and we've talked a little bit about him. Look, when you talk about Rodney McLeod, it's a guy that has played for Jim Schwartz fairly recently, and Jim Schwartz talks about his communication and how important that is.
Oh, yeah. So, I think I mentioned that Smith played for Schwartz. I'm sorry. It was McLeod that played for Schwartz. And what he does, he's a perfect fit because he's a guy who can play both the Grant Delpit up in the box, strong safety, and he can play the free safety where Juan Thornhill will be. So he can be a combination of both. He can give both those guys rest. You're talking about a guy who has 688 career tackles. He has, 12 forced fumbles. He has 18 career interceptions. Like I said, he's very physical at the point of attack. He can play down in the box, almost like a linebacker if he gets, 12 or 21 personnel. Very, very versatile. Obviously, he's a guy who plays in Schwartz's scheme. I think that's very important in terms of he'll be able to relay to his teammates what Schwartz expects. What he expects in meetings, what he expects in practice, what he expects all of them to do on a daily basis. That's important for those guys to know what Schwartz is thinking and how he works. So
you mentioned he's versatile. What do you see in this first clip with Rodney McLeod?
Well, the first thing that stuck out to me is that he's a great tackler. So here he is down in the box. You can see him. At 26, he's on the hash up top, almost in a linebacker position. Zooms in on him. He's going to make a play here. And he's really, really good at playing down in the box. He's a really good tackler. And the Browns have really struggled with tackling over the last couple of years. And he's a guy who's a really, really sure tackler. Again, had 90-plus stops last year with Indianapolis. Plays in the box, can tackle in space, can take on big linemen, really physical guy. A guy who understands both positions in a Schwartz defense. And here he is in the box making a tackle on a running back with big linemen coming at him. He avoids the chaos and makes a play.
So we see him kind of in the box, what that would be kind of the Grant Delpit type role. Now let's take a look at him, free safety, kind of in coverage, more of the Juan Thornhill type role.
Yeah, you're going to see him here driving. He's at the safety spot, and you're going to get a couple different angles here. He's going to drive on the ball, get his opposite arm in, which is going to get that right arm in, which is going to help him not have a pass interference there. Again, he's very good in coverage. He's very good. He can play that one free, so he's going to be able to just kind of play center field, play sideline to sideline. He's very good at recognizing routes. He's very good at route combinations. He understands what teams are trying to do. And then he's going to come up and he's going to strike you. He's a violent guy. He gets the ball out. He creates interceptions. He creates turnovers. He's very excitable. And again, he's a guy who can come in early and kind of teach everybody what their rules are, what their responsibilities are, because he's played 3 or 4 years with Schwartz.
So you mentioned being a really good tackler, something you always want from a safety. Next clip, take us through what you see here.
Well, this is great. So you're going to see him come down here. He's going to come down in the box here. It's either a robber look or some type of a zone where he's going to be the strong safety, maybe a cover 3. But he's a really good tackler in space. So, you got to be able to prevent big plays. You got to be able to tackle these backs in space. Try to get to second, third, and 6+. And here he is. He's just coming up from the safety spot, making a really good tackle. Against the Eagles. Does this consistently. So he's always around the football. He's always making tackles. And when he gets there, he's a sure tackler.
And a guy that has been a starter without question. And, you may see him on the field quite a bit. They may play 3 safeties as well because you've got Delpit, you've got Thornhill, and you've got McLeod. Those are starting quality safeties in the NFL.
Yeah, you get those guys that, especially Delpit and with Delpit gives you that flexibility with McLeod to almost be a linebacker type, especially when you get in this 10 personnel or, these multiple receiver sets where you're not going to get the lead backs with the fullbacks with the tight ends. You're getting these zones plays. So they're physical enough and they're savvy enough to play down in the box. And then it gives you a lot more speed and it gives you a lot more coverage. With more coverage, you get more pass rush. And obviously that's what it comes down. Schwartz wants those guys to play a field. He wants to man coverage. He wants to challenge people. He wants people to be physical. He wants to be simple. Again, McLeod can help teach this guy and kind of bridge that gap and have this happen really quickly.
Well, as the other thing is in coverage, he's pretty good. Take us through this final clip with McLeod.
Well, here's what I like about him is that he's a guy when he as it is at the free safety, he kind of is a ball hawk. So he kind of has a understanding of route concepts and where people are trying to get to based on down a distance, based on what hash the ball is on, based what film study. You can tell he's a great film watcher because he understands what other teams are trying to do. So this right here is just the idea of playing center field, which he's going to do a lot. Him and Thornhill when they're in, and just kind of keeping everything in front, understanding what's going to happen, and then just going to get the ball. Again, what I like about this play is you're going to see what you're going to see from the Browns from the front. You're going to see wide threes, wide fives, and you're going to see great pressure. So, this clip here kind of signifies what you're going to get from a Schwartz defense. They get a little twist up front. They create great pressure on the quarterback. They pressure the quarterback. They force him to make a bad throw, and you get the interception. So this is really good team defense, kind of what Schwartz wants to do.
Yeah, and Smith and McLeod both add elements that the Browns needed on their defense without question. Really, they fit what the Browns were looking for.
Well, you've heard so much about potential with the Browns and how they draft and how they do things, and I think they do an amazing job with that. They need production. They need guys who can come in, and they need pros. They need guys who understand fronts and coverages and how to do things, have been in the heat of the battle, have played for championship teams. You think about Za'Darius Smith being with the Packers, and you think about McLeod being with the Eagles, and these guys have championship pedigree, and they know how to play. And they're veterans, and they're not old, but they're experienced. And the Browns defense needs voices. They need guys who have been there. They need guys who can get people lined up, and they need guys that can fly around. And that's the one thing, as much as the talent at some positions, they've lacked that voice and that, that kind of people say you need pros. Well, that's what pros are. Pros are going to help you practice. Pros are going to help you get lined up. Pros are going to help you with expectations, how to come in. Those are grown adults. A lot of those older guys in their late 20s and 30s, they have kids and families, and this is what they do for a living, and they take it really, really seriously. And sometimes that kind of carries over. And the Browns, the core of their defense, those guys who are their stars, are starting to get to that age where they have to start producing now. And these two guys, I think, are going to bridge that gap. Not only is their play fantastic, but their leadership is going to be great.
Lance Reisland, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, always really good stuff. Make sure you check him out. Film breakdowns on cleveland.com. You can also check him out in pages of the Plain Dealer. Sports4CLE will continue talking Browns. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Some sad news to report. The NFL lost a great one, and the Browns lost a franchise icon. Jim Brown passed away at the age of 87. Brown was one of the Browns Hall of Famers who helped get the franchise back to Cleveland in 1999 after it moved away to Baltimore in 1995. Here is how Jim Brown was introduced to the crowd in 1999 at the Countdown to the Browns celebration.
A first-round draft pick from Syracuse and the NFL Rookie of the Year in 1957, he made the Pro Bowl every year of his career. An 8-time rushing champion, he led the NFL in touchdowns a record 5 times. He was inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1971. His uniform number will never be worn by another Cleveland Brown. Ladies and gentlemen, the greatest running back in NFL history, number 32, Jim Brown.
Jim Brown passed away today at the age of 87. A statement from Dee and Jimmy Haslam. Jim Brown, a true icon not only of the Cleveland Browns but the entire NFL, was certainly the greatest to ever put on a Browns uniform, arguably one of the greatest players in NFL history. Jim was one of the reasons the Browns have such a tremendous fan base today. So many fans grew up watching him just dominate every time he stepped on the field, and countless accolades on the field only tell you a small part of the story. Really, Jim Brown was one of the first athletes who was involved in social justice. It involved Muhammad Ali. They had a big meeting here in Cleveland when Muhammad Ali refused to sign up for the draft. Jim Brown was a guy that was always intelligent, always articulate, always had an opinion. Take a listen to what he said back in 1999 about the Browns coming back to Cleveland, a movement that he had a lot to do with.
I'm happy to be here because I respect all of these men, and I respect the transition of teams getting the Browns back. But I don't always compare, because I think that in any era you have the characteristics of that era. So the passion that we felt, we knew nothing about what was going to happen. We played the game because of the game, and we had great respect for each other, and we didn't compete as such off the field as who was better and who wasn't better. We were all very happy that we all had varying skills in various positions. And I would like to say, even though there are a lot of things generally today that I don't like, I think the game has come a long ways for the spectators. I think the people are filling the stadiums. I think the Super Bowl is the greatest event in sports. And we have to give credit to all of those things. So I just don't want to be sitting here saying that nothing is good today. There's a lot of things that are very good. In any era, you have individuals that are passionate. But if I might add one negative factor, I don't think it's free agency that has really turned the game around. I think the agents themselves it hasn't been a positive factor for the league, because their agenda will never be for the league. It will always be for their particular client. And when they have the power of the decision-making power that they have, they can make decisions based on money alone. And anytime you make decisions based on money alone, it's not going to necessarily be good for your product.
Again, that was Jim Brown back in 1999. Passed away today at the age of 87. Let's welcome in Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan. Spencer, I had the pleasure of interviewing him as a young reporter, and he was, without question, the most intimidating guy until he decided you were all right. And once he decided you were all right, he was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, you're very fortunate to have had that experience. I can't say I ever got a chance to meet Jim Brown, but and also full disclosure, like not being a Cleveland native, being someone who came to college out here and then ended up settling down out here, I knew of Jim Brown being an NFL fan growing up, but it wasn't until I really lived in Cleveland and became part of this great society and the sports culture out here. And you hear stories from, older Browns fans or fans that were my age who had it passed down to them from generations before, who would talk about Jim Brown, and then you sort of read more about him and you see more of his highlights. And he was obviously an incredible figure. I think if you are without question, if you're trying to make a Cleveland sports Mount Rushmore, I think him and LeBron James are number 1 and 2 in some order, right? And, it's interesting. I saw LeBron, I think before I jumped on here, he put out a statement on Instagram about Jim Brown and his impact, just being a young, black kid growing up in Northeast Ohio. He resonated with a lot of people with the work he did, obviously speaking out for social injustice and that sort of thing. I know that was something the Browns certainly noted as well. And that goes a long way as well. I think his impact goes beyond just on the football field, but we know it sort of starts there. I think that line in the statement that you read from Jimmy and Dee Haslam about how, if you basically just that his impact was so massive, and his ability to resonate from when you think about the Browns history, he comes to mind. I think that's one of the first things I think of is just when you think about the history of the Browns, he is number one on the list of people that you think of, spanning a generation of Browns fan. He had his era where he played in the 50s and 60s, but, the team, I think that, not that there wasn't a history before that, but I think that is like the first thing people go back to is like the days of Jim Brown. And then it obviously transpires into more memories and the cardiac kids and all these different things. But yeah, I think the history certainly starts with Jim Brown and this organization. And he has been an icon in this town for a long, long time. So certainly rest in peace to him. You know what he means to this city and to this fan base. And some sad news, unexpected. I mean, you guys sent me the rundown for the show today, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere that one came down. So I'm glad we're getting a chance to talk about it, though, for sure.
All right. So again, Jim Brown passes away at the age of 87, and a loss for not only the Browns but the NFL. All right. We're going to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, back to present-day Browns.
Watching Deshaun Watson's old Texans tape, I kind of see, even though everybody kind of got on him about the whole Hopkins trade, Bill O'Brien, he was trying to spread the wealth with Watson and try to find young and talented players so that way Watson wouldn't just be throwing to one or two people. And you see how the offense went when he had multiple weapons at his disposal. And Watson was dangerous in 2020, regardless of the record. But I think that's what Andrew Berry is trying to do, and that's what Kevin Stefanski wants to do. They've seen what makes him a great quarterback and that giving him multiple weapons, and they've done an amazing job with doing that.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Spencer, what I would say is Deshaun Watson hasn't ever played with a running back as good as Nick Chubb. He hasn't ever played behind a line as good as the one he's going to play behind for a full season. Now, those 6 games are those 6 games. The key is going to be get an offense that he can thrive in and give him some freedom to do the things he does well.
Yeah, and that's what we've been hearing about all offseason, right? Obviously, the moves that Andrew Berry's made have been the big topic of conversation because, by all accounts, he addressed all the major needs and problems that we thought this team had last season. So that certainly bodes well for how we think the season could play out and the fact that they've improved, but both on both sides of the ball. But the other big thing we've heard about is Kevin Stefanski is going to sort of rework this offense. You know, there's talk that maybe in those last 6 games, it was more about just letting Deshaun kind of come out and see what he could do. And you had already sort of built the offense around Jacoby Brissett's skill set. So you weren't just going to change it at that point in the season to, show off a lot of what you want to do with Deshaun Watson. So I think in some ways, Kevin Stefanski kind of has a clean slate coming into this year. I know his job's in the line, but it's like, hey, take this ball of clay and mold it into what you think is going to work for this player and his skill set. We've heard Deshaun talk about how he thinks Kevin Stefanski is a great play caller. So I'm interested to see with some of these new additions, Elijah Moore, and obviously Nick Chubb without Kareem Hunt now in the mix, and some of the other pieces that they've now added in that you hope Cedric Tillman as a rookie, maybe David Bell takes that next step. Just seeing how these guys kind of fit into the process and what this offense that Kevin Stefanski has planned looks like. But, yeah, I think the season, we all kind of know this going in, starts and ends with how Kevin Stefanski draws up the offense around him and how Deshaun Watson performs. They're going to go as that group goes, 100%.
Yeah, and the other thing is Kevin Stefanski has not had a quarterback as talented as Deshaun Watson. So it's up to him to make an offense that highlights him. Spencer German and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. You know, Juan Thornhill has to kind of understand where we Brown fans are coming from with the negativity. We've heard it before by so many new players and new coaches that things are going to be different, that things are going to change. They don't care what happened in the past because they weren't part of it. Now, I perfectly understand that. It's not their fault that we've been losing for so much. But he also has to understand our side of things. We constantly, blindly support and just assume that our team will finally be good and compete for championships. But we've been burnt and heartbroken so many times before, so it's just so difficult to just automatically assume that our team is going to be good. Thanks.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. And Spencer, I get the fans' frustration, but you know what? I love the fact that the guys coming in here say that doesn't affect us at all. That's the mindset they should have. You don't want the players going, oh, there's a curse.
Yeah, I kind of laughed during that call. Not because it's a bad call. I understand like the passion of the fans, and that's always going to come out. I just laugh because I feel like this is the conversation every year, right? We get new players in here, and they're coming in. They feel good about the situation that they signed on for, and I mean, even as you think about this last group of free agents, you know, John Johnson III didn't work out here, but he came in here bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to work, and seemed like he was going to be a good fit early on, and then it just didn't work out with the defense they were running. But, yeah, like it's funny that we end up having this conversation every year. I don't blame the fans for feeling this way, and I've kind of said already throughout this offseason, you know, I love what Andrew Berry's done. I love that they've addressed all these needs. I like the fact that Deshaun Watson seems to be through the woods on a lot of the legal stuff that he was dealing with. Now he's just able to kind of focus on football. He's doing this Puerto Rico trip with his offensive teammates and trying to kind of build the camaraderie there. He's got a full regular offseason to kind of work with them. Like, I like where the team's at, but then I look around the AFC and I'm like, yeah, man, like this is going to be a gauntlet of a season no matter how you slice it. So I'm kind of cautiously optimistic. I'm like, I think the Browns are going to be better, but it's going to come down to the X's and O's and executing on the field to get this thing done. So I understand 100% where fans are a little hesitant because I'm right there with you. But at the same time, as we've seen year after year, like the players just don't care. Like these players that come in, they're not looking at the history and saying that affects anything that they're doing this year. It's a new season, clean slate. They're coming in with their mindset and their mentality and their game plans, and none of that stuff that happened in the past impacts them or impacts how the season's going to go. It's all about execution in the now in 2023.
Spencer German, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Spencer.
Always appreciate coming on. Thanks for having me.
All right, Spencer German, make sure you check him out, 92.3 The Fan. Each week, in conjunction with the Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program, we recognize a role model student from somewhere across the state of Ohio. Today, we head to Aurora High School. McKenna Metzger is a junior for the Green Men. She is also one of the best softball players in the area, as well as a 4.0 student in the classroom. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is proud to salute McKenna Metzger, this week's Shining Star. Aurora junior McKenna Metzger is an imposing figure for the Green Men on the softball field. In the circles, she's been dominant, a strikeout machine. At the plate, she's been a force, a power hitter hitting almost 600. Metzger is just playing with a ton of confidence.
It's so huge in the sport of softball because it's like based around failure, and I think that's something I've also been like really focused on because sometimes I do like overthink things and I put a lot of pressure on myself. So I think I'm trying to like move past that, and if you have a bad game, it's a bad game. You have to just move on, and I think that also like led me to just like go up to the plate and stay calm and just do my best.
McKenna's best has been awfully good by any standards. She threw a perfect game earlier this year against Copley, recording 11 strikeouts in a 10-0 six-inning win.
Well, I never really knew like what the rules of a perfect game was, but I remember coming in the fourth inning, I was like, I don't think anyone's gotten on base, and I went to my teammate, Layla, and I was like, I have to tell you something, and then I was like, no, I can't tell you. I was like, I don't want to jinx it, so I didn't tell her, and she was so mad at me, but then at the end of the game, you're like, you threw a perfect game, and I was like, that's what I was going to tell you. So it was kind of funny, because like we don't talk about it anymore in the dugout, because we don't want to jinx it.
The success is no surprise. Metzger works hard year-round to maximize her talents. And that work is paying off in all facets of the game.
Power. I think I'm obviously pretty tall, so I try to get in the weight room as much as I did like this preseason, and I think honestly I've just been hitting the ball harder than I ever have, and that's been resulting to like home runs and doubles and even just singles that get to the infield.
Even though Metzger has another year of high school remaining, she was being recruited by a number of Division I programs, and she committed early to continue her education in softball at Kent State University.
The programs of the softball team, it's just great. Like I've already met a lot of the players and I just love them like all. And the coaches have like given me such a huge opportunity to go out there and play. And also just like the school itself, like they say like you feel it when you feel it, and like you definitely do. Because I got to go to a lot of schools, which I was lucky to do, but it just definitely felt like home.
As good as Metzger is on the field, she may be even better in the classroom. McKenna carries a 4.2 GPA in accelerated classes.
It's just as important to me as my sports are. I try and work as hard in the classroom as I can because obviously that has helped me get the scholarship that I did at Kent State. And again, like I'm a perfectionist, so I'm like also hard on myself in the classroom just as hard as I am on the field. And I think I've just like had that motivation in me.
And McKenna has a pretty good idea of what she wants to study in college.
I've always been a math and science girl. But also like ASL, I just started and I actually really enjoy it. For a while, I was thinking sports medicine. I wasn't sure like what I wanted to do with it, but also recently I've been thinking about like speech pathology because I am in ASL class here in the school and I just really love it. So I think if I like majored in speech pathology and minored in ASL, that would be really cool.
It's safe to assume that McKenna Metzger will attack her studies with the same intensity that's made her one of the area's best softball players. If you know a student who deserves recognition, we want to hear about them, and you can nominate them completely online. Go to OhioLottery.com. Find the About section. Click on Partners in Education. There you will see links to nomination forms. Nominate that student as an academic all-star, and they could end up being featured as our next shining star. Well done, McKenna Metzger. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.